The body has a much bigger role to play in brain health than previously acknowledged. And joining us now to help lay out this body-brain connection, we welcome back Dr. Norman Deutsch, psychiatrist and author of The Brain That Changes Itself. Your fourth night in a row here on TVO. It's good to have you back again. When we talk about the healthy brain, everybody knows what a healthy body is.
Right.
What's a healthy brain?
Well, a healthy brain is one that can do the basic functions of, it has cells in it that can do the basic functions of any cell. It can get rid of waste products. It can reproduce itself, which a few brain cells can do. It can gather in energy from glucose and so on and energize those activities. And then it can do activities that are very specific to brain cells. And brain cells in the science literature are said to be irritable, meaning they respond to the environment by creating excitation. And they're very good at communicating with each other. So the healthy brain's got to basically do those basic specific cell functions and then the unique ones to the brain.
How many cells in the brain?
100
million?
billion.
100 billion?
Yeah.
And they can communicate with each other either better or worse, depending on how irritable they are?
Yes.
You're smiling, I'm smiling, because
Yeah.
you'll admit that sounds funny.
Yeah, well, irritability is a funny property of a cell.
The conventional thinking on this in the past has been what?
Well, the conventional approach to brain problems has been, if you've got a brain problem, you get a brain doctor, and that would be a neurologist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist or psychoanalyst or psychotherapist, whatever. And it's presumed that the problem has basically been centered in the brain, because that's the way Western science looks at the human body. It's very good at dividing things, dividing us up. But it's divided up in textbooks, but of course, in reality, we're not divided up at all. And it turns out that general things you do for your body are often the most powerful interventions you can do for your brain. I first got into this through autism. Children with autism were often taken to psychiatrists, and the psychiatrists focused on what was going on in their brains and devised interventions for that, and they haven't been great, frankly. At the same time, ever since autism was discovered, we knew that they had a lot of many of those kids had gastrointestinal problems. So their parents might march them off to either nutritionists or people to look at their GI function. And some of them found that if they changed their diet, not everybody, by removing certain things, that not only would their gastrointestinal problems get better,
But their autism would
but
as
their
well?
autism symptoms would decrease in severity and frequency.
So there's the body-mind connection, not just the mind-body.
People started to, and it was often parents more than physicians, frankly, started to really, because they were the ones that were, in charge of the care of their kids. We're noticing that some kids did better off gluten, some kids did better off dairy, or whatever it was, because it's really different for different people. And it started to become apparent that autistic kids many of them have inflammation throughout their bodies, and that the brain inflammation is just one example of the inflammation going on throughout their bodies, and that you could address that by addressing the inflammation throughout the body.
We're going to get into these issues of inflammation, what it means, the impact it has in our discussion. But I want to bring this list up here, 6 ways to make your brain healthier. Then
Sure.
we'll go through this, because these seem obvious, but again, we don't all do them. So 6 ways to make your brain healthier. Of course, exercise. Be at a normal weight. Have a healthy diet. Don't smoke. Drink in moderation. And avoid neurotoxins.
Right.
Let's just go through my eyebrows are going up on some of these things. Being at a normal weight, why would that have an impact on the brain?
Well, it seems that if you're obese, we tend to think of our fat as a storage organ, but it's not just a storage organ. It is involved in the hormonal regulation of the body, etc., and it's involved in many things. And we don't know exactly why it is, but let me tell you something really interesting. They've done some brain scans of kids who were obese since they were 4 years old. And what they find is that there are changes in the white matter of the brain that are not unlike some of the changes that you see in dementia. These are in really young kids who are super obese. So We don't know all the reasons why this is the case, but let me just say where that list comes from, because it's really important. The first 5 things on that list come from a very recently released study at from the University of Cardiff that basically followed over 2,000 men for 30 years. And it found that if the men followed those things, diet, healthy diet, weight, exercise, avoiding smoking, the drinking problem, that they lowered their risk of Alzheimer's by 60%. Now,
that's huge.
If we had a drug that did that, we'd be celebrating. Well, we actually already can do that. We just have to show that kind of discipline.
We can do it without medicine. Just do this.
We're very smitten with high-tech solutions to problems, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And what we can do with these interventions is certainly defer Alzheimer's. So this is just a staggering finding, which is why I'm really, really excited about the show today, because we have people who really understand how these things fit together.
We are going to dive deep into this list during the course of our discussion, but in the last 30 seconds we have here, let me pick one. Alcohol use.
Sure.
In moderation only.
Different people define moderation differently,
I guess.
and people who have an alcohol problem often define themselves as just moderate drinkers.
But you're not saying go cold turkey.
No, but it's limited. Alcohol is toxic, and there's a whole category. It actually represents a category of things that we can do for our brain that harm it. Neurotoxins, things that mess up the brain cells, predispose to a lot of illnesses, and this includes dementia. And the neurotoxins come in 2 brands. There's the ones that we take into our bodies, and then the ones we produce ourselves. And there's several that we produce ourselves, and we can go into that in the program. But I mean, the most common one is the stress reaction can actually lead to neurodegeneration.
And I will be sure to follow up on that during the course of the discussion to come. Thank you for this. Once more with Feeling tomorrow night?
Yes.
See you then. That's Dr. Norman Doidge. Up next, from what we eat to what we do, we'll explore further the body-brain connection right after this. As we age, so does our brain. And joining us now to help discern what can be done to ensure brain health from cradle to grave. In San Francisco, California, Martha Herbert. She's a pediatric neurologist and neuroscientist at Mass General Hospital at the Harvard Medical School. In Naples, Florida, David Perlmutter, neurologist and fellow of the American College of Nutrition and the author of The Grain Brain. In Boston, Massachusetts, John Ratey, clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And with us here in studio, Tiffany Chow, behavioral neurologist at the Sam and Ida Ross Memory Clinic at Baycrest Health Sciences. First of all, Tiffany, good to see you back here in our studio.
Thanks
a
for
return
having me
performance
back.
for you, and to our 3 guests in Points Beyond in the United States. We're grateful you could spare some time for us on this Mysteries of the Mind week on TVO. I know we just put this up, Sheldon, a few moments ago in our conversation with Dr. Doidge, but it bears repeating, so let's put it up again. The 6 ways to make your brain healthier. Exercise 1, normal weight 2, healthy diet 3, don't smoke 4, limit the alcohol use, moderation 5, and avoid neurotoxins 6. Let's go around our literal and metaphorical table here and just say, if you had to pick one of these things to improve your brain health, which is the most important one? Martha Herbert, why don't you start us off in San Francisco?
Well, I'm going to be contentious here. I refuse to pick just one. I think you really have to optimize your entire lifestyle to get best health outcomes for your brain.
We're off to a wonderfully contentious start. Okay, David Perlmutter, how do you want to respond to that?
Well, let me respond then, if I could, to Martha. And I didn't know we'd get to have 2 votes, but I think I'm going to go back to 1 vote, and that would be exercise. And there's no question that exercise paves the way for brain preservation and protection. So I'm going to stick to the rules here, but I'll probably break them later on.
Well, I'm interested in that answer because Grain Brain being the title of your book, I would have thought healthy diet was number 1, but you surprise us a bit with exercise.
No, without a doubt. I think that aerobic exercise through its what we call epigenetic activity, in other words, turning on specific parts of DNA to code for a specific chemical that's so dreadfully important for brain health, in my opinion, far outweighs really everything else in terms of its importance. Now, no question in terms of damaging effects on the brain, diet is critical, but I really think for purposes of education that the listening audience really needs to know that the most powerful supplement of all is really aerobic exercise, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk about that later on.
We certainly shall. John Ratey, what would you put of those 6 at the top of the list?
Well, I would agree with Dr. Perlmutter that it is exercise is number 1, but also with Martha, I think that healthy diet is equally important. But lots and lots of evidence has been accrued over the years looking at exercise and its effect on pushing back cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease. The Mayo Clinic's reviewed over 1,600 papers last year and saw looking at the effect of exercise in delaying cognitive decline and finding them all very positive in their findings. So that we know that exercise does so much in the brain to make us optimize our behavior, optimize our feeling state, and make our cognitive apparatus work optimally.
Tiffany Chow, what's the view from Baycrest?
I would say that I'm going to put on the board, on the scoreboard, the neurotoxins, especially the neurotoxin that comes from within, cortisol. If we could all learn how to manage our stress better from an early age and continue that through the lifespan, I think that impacts a lot of the other things on the list, but cortisol is one of those things that's toxic to your hippocampus, which is a memory center. It's a memory center in the brain, and it is the epicenter of damage in Alzheimer's disease. So if we can bolster it, support it, make it big and fluffy throughout our lives, then reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease.
How are you defining neurotoxins? Give us some examples.
Good question. Neurotoxins are those things that once your brain is exposed to them will cause shrinkage or death of neurons. We want to keep all those neurons, we want to keep them happily connected and communicating with each other. So some of the classic neurotoxins would be heavy metals, lead, mercury poisoning. Other neurotoxins have to do with organophosphates, things that can lead to other neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease.
John Ratey, I think everybody understands the connection between you exercise, your body feels and gets better. I'm not sure everybody gets the connection between you exercise and your brain gets better. You want to make that connection for us?
Sure. Well, think about this. When we were hunter-gatherers for 500,000 years, our brains evolved and developed to make us better movers. We used those same nerve cells that evolved over that period of time to think, to be cognitive, those are the cells that make us most human. So that by exercising, we activate those cells. And the brain we think of now as a muscle. So the more we use it, the better it is. You have everybody out there doing Sudoku and learning a new language as we age to use our brains more. And we know that activity is important. But in exercise, we're using more of our brain cells than in any other activity that we know of. And this all creates a lot of good stuff. Dr. Perlmutter referred to a substance that I call miracle grow for the brain, or BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And every time we exercise, we make more of that stuff than in any other situation that helps keep our hippocampus fluffy and growing. So, and that's the thing. We really want our brains to continue to grow.
I can see the theme of this program is going to be keeping your hippocampus fluffy. Got it. I'm learning. Martha Herbert, we're hearing a lot about inflammation these days. A two-part question here. What is it, and how does it affect the body and the brain?
So inflammation is a very big deal, and many of the health-promoting things on your list can reduce it, and on the other hand, if you don't observe those things, you'll increase it. Inflammation is a repair process that the brain engages in, and also the whole body. And chronic inflammation is the problem, where the brain is trying to fix itself, and the body too, because inflammation is really a whole body problem, and it really can't complete the job, either because the irritation is continuing, say the neurotoxins, or insufficient supplies from a diet, or because you're not getting enough sleep, which is another thing that I think should have been on the list, because sleep clears out trash from the brain, and lack of sleep promotes inflammation. So inflammation is a very, very big deal, and it's a part of the diabetes and the obesity epidemics, and it also affects the brain. So I'm very glad you brought that up.
I'm going to come back to sleep a little bit later, but I do want to understand more about what the irritation you just referred to, what that actually does to the brain. Can you help us with that?
Absolutely. So you get activated cells in the brain, the glial cells in particular, the astrocytes and the microglia, go into an alarm state, and they put out chemicals that create excitation, and they stop doing such a good job in picking up the trash and protecting the brain. The astrocytes, the wonderful, beautiful star-shaped cells in our brain that outnumber the neurons, normally clear out the neurotransmitter glutamate after the neurons fire, but when they're in this inflamed state, they don't do a good job at that. So the excitation becomes a chronic irritation, and you become more irritable, and you become more hyperresponsive. And as this goes on, your thinking can get confused. It's like having static on your phone. And also, the energy production of the brain is compromised during the state of inflammation. So overall, you're basically compromising the whole coordination apparatus of the brain, because the neurons don't work so well. The BDNF gets messed up, and things start to spiral down, and unless you aggressively try to turn it around, and that's why I advocate all of the different lifestyle interventions, because you don't want to like exercise a lot and smoke 3 packs a day and work in a lead plant.
Right.
You've got to really pull all of this stuff together to especially when you're sick. When you're sick, you really need high-powered attempts to make everything better so the brain can pull out of the hole it's in when it has an inflammatory problem.
Just take another 10 seconds, because you dropped an acronym on us there that I didn't understand. BDNF, what's that?
That's what John Ratey was talking about, and Perlmutter talked. John Ratey just called it the miracle grow for the brain. That's stimulated by exercise.
Okay. Now I want to follow up on...
brain-derived growth factor.
That's what it stands for. Okay. David Perlmutter, I want to follow up on your first answer, where, of course, you've got this best-selling book that's out, Grain Brain, and I just want to better understand what you're referring to when you talk about a grain brain.
Well, let me take a step back here for just a moment and really comment on what Tiffany was talking about in terms of neurotoxins. And I think the, bar none, most important neurotoxin under-recognized is, in fact, glucose, the very thing that we were all taught that the brain is desperate for and prefers. The reality is that even subtle elevations of blood sugar ultimately lead to what Dr. Herbert was talking about, and that is inflammation, and beyond inflammation, an increase of what is called free radical mediated stress, the action of these chemicals that are called free radicals that actually rust our DNA, our RNA, our proteins, and our fat. So we now understand that really one of the cornerstones of brain degeneration is, in fact, the very blood sugar measurements that you have at your doctor's office. We've known for several years that you can predict shrinkage of the hippocampus, of the area of the brain that mediates memory, that we want to keep fluffy. You can predict who is going to get shrinkage of the hippocampus based upon a simple blood test, which is the fasting blood sugar. And in the August 8th edition, 2013 of the New England Journal of Medicine was a very powerful article that indicated that there is a direct relationship for risk for developing dementia, a disease for which there is no treatment, based upon the fasting blood sugar. And why the study was so important was this study revealed that fasting blood sugars of 105 and 110 already strongly predicted who would become a dementia patient, again, a disease for which there is no treatment. a situation that is under our control. Our blood sugar is directly related, obviously, to our dietary choices. Now, the issue with blood sugar is really quite simple. When blood sugar becomes elevated, it binds to proteins in our bodies and in our brains in a process called glycation, and creates these products called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. And that relates beautifully to what Dr. Herbert has been talking about, because when you increase the AGEs in the body and in the brain, this becomes a very important upregulator of that exact process, inflammation. And make no mistake about it, inflammation is the cornerstone of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's represents that same process of inflammation that we all know about when our knee is inflamed or we're bitten by a mosquito bite. The brain becomes inflamed in Alzheimer's, as Dr. Herbert was so eloquent in describing, and the tissues secrete these chemicals called cytokines that are directly toxic to brain cell function. And it turns out that the area of the brain, at least in Alzheimer's, most susceptible is in fact that area called the hippocampus. But the empowering part of this story is that shrinkage of the hippocampus is actually reversible. And, you know, I could probably speak for everybody on the panel today in stating that when we went to medical school, we were told that we were given a finite number of brain cells. What was it, 100 billion? And that by the time we were 18 years of age, that was it. And then every beer you drank after that, you'd lose 20,000 brain cells, or whatever the magic number was. But now we know the brain has this incredible ability to regenerate itself, a process called neurogenesis. And that specific activity, growing back your brain's memory center, as wonderfully described in February of 2011 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, is brought on by performing aerobic exercise. The empowering part of that story is if you cut your carbohydrates and therefore your blood sugar goes down, and you engage in aerobic exercise, not only can you stave off the decline of memory that we have come to expect, but you can actually reverse that memory decline, as wonderfully published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science.
Okay, Tiffany Chow wants to follow on that.
I just wanted to say I completely agree with the role of hyperglycemia as a bad agent for preventing dementia. It's one of the interesting risk factors that cuts across all ethnicities and races, unlike other risk factors like educational level or socioeconomic status or other genetic risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. But one of the big resistances that people feel about what David's been teaching us in Brain has to do with, do we have to cut off all carbohydrates, really? Or are you talking about switching from simple carbohydrates to complex carbohydrates? And this is the perfect opportunity to ask him, so I couldn't help myself.
Before you put it out there, what's your view on that?
I think, well, we know that people have a hard time changing their diets. There are cultural factors, there are personality factors, there are many things that go into what we put in our mouths and how we fuel ourselves. And I'm hoping with our brain health awareness education like today's show that we'll do a better job of giving people incentive to be more mindful about how they're fueling their bodies to keep those bodies going in a more sustainable way. However, when you try to get somebody to give up something that's part of their culture, part of their internal sense of comfort, we have some major challenges. So we can't do draconian advice like give up all carbohydrates and be successful. I think there's some really important messages behind what David's saying, but I just wanted to get a sense of how far he wants to go with that in terms of what people can hear and what they'll actually do.
David Perlmutter, over to you.
Well, I think that, Tiffany, you make some very good points, because it isn't easy to reverse a lifetime of dietary habit that's induced by availability and induced by cultural preference. And that said, the term draconian, I think, is very good, because what I'm advocating is certainly well short of draconian. Allowing 60 to 80 grams of total carbs per day, I think, is certainly, when compared to others' suggestions, including the Atkins diet, et cetera, especially at its induction, is anything but draconian. So is it valuable to change the diet and recommend changing this diet? I think without question. And I think, you know, aside from the carbohydrate question, which I think was a very good one, The other pushback from society seems to be relinquishing this misheld notion that somehow fat is detrimental to health. And that's been kind of inculcated into our psyche since the late 1980s, early 1990s, that somehow fat is an enemy towards health and physiology. And the reality of the situation is that human physiology, especially brain physiology, is desperate for dietary fat. With the caveat being, of course, that the right fat choices, the natural fats, the olive oils, nuts, seeds, wild fish, etc., as opposed to the modified hydrogenated damaged fats that are like coffin nails as they relate to immunity and even brain health. So I think the other side of the coin of the story is that aside from the limitation of carbohydrates in a non-draconian way, I think the judicious introduction back to the table of dietary fat represents a revolutionary new diet, really only one that people have been eating for well over 1 million years.
I wonder, though, whether you have to be, Tiffany Chow, draconian in order to get all the carbohydrates out of your diet. And that does require a certain amount of draconian approach, does it not?
It requires some planning. What David said is so true. The availability of the stuff that's bad for us, it's ubiquitous.
Everywhere.
It's
Yep.
everywhere.
Yeah.
They tried to change high school or school-aged children by offering better food in the cafeteria. And those kids opted to walk across the street to fast food because they didn't get the flavor that they wanted, or it just wasn't advertised as well. They weren't taught, they weren't acculturated away from fast food. So it actually takes, and I don't know if you've tried to change your diet recently, but you actually need to bring the food that's good for you with you wherever you go so that it's accessible. So when you feel like,
So
oh, I
true.
love that bag of chips. Okay, I actually have these great double roasted almonds with dried cranberries in my pocket. I think I will fool myself by eating that. And if I still want the bag of chips, half an hour from now, an hour from now, I'll go for it. But often you can stave off, delay that knee-jerk reaction.
We don't have a culture that supports that, because if you want to go to a movie or you want to go to a baseball game or a hockey game, they don't let you bring your own food in.
No. Sometimes, I'm not saying this on national TV, you can sneak it in. If you are a woman with a handbag, little snack-sized Ziplocs,
Not a bad idea.
good for what ails you.
John Ratey, where are you on this issue?
Well, I'm right with everybody. I'm a little more radical perhaps than Tiffany. I mean, I think you really have to cut the carbs as much as you can, and it's very difficult. But then if you have a balanced diet, aside from that, you get a lot of carbs with vegetables, and you get enough there. And if you can confine yourself to eating vegetables, having the right meats, having the right fish, nuts and seeds and all the stuff that we evolved eating, I think we go a long way to making our diet correct. And another thing about exercise, I want to throw that back in here, is that exercise not only reduces our blood sugar and increases our insulin and keeps it more at an optimal level, but it also helps us decrease our cravings for the things that are bad for us, the carbs specifically, or alcohol, or all the addictive substances. And this is one of the big problems, is that kids, and we all, get so addicted so easily to glucose and to starches and to those things that are promoted by our food table or a food pyramid that is finally getting changed, finally getting flipped a bit. And I think is in for even more of a flip. So we'll see much less emphasis on the starches or on even the whole grains, which I think have a problem in the long run.
While you have the floor, John Ratey, I wonder if I could get you to weigh in also on the so-called superfoods that we have heard for probably more than a decade are truly superb for us, related to the conversation we're having tonight. Salmon, blueberries, spinach. What do you think?
I think they're all great, and they all should be a big part of our diets. And I think they give us the omega-3s, they give us a lot of the nutrients, they help stimulate internal activity in our brain cells to deal with our free radicals. And I would add to that cumin and cinnamon and all kinds of other cool things that we're learning are really good for us. Not only do they taste good, but they're good for us because they do interesting things in our body's cells and intracellularly, stimulating our brain cells to make a bigger group of what I call the janitorial services to get rid of the free radicals and to help repair the brain enzymes and the DNA that gets broken when we're active. But those superfoods are real, and they are something that we need to pay attention to.
A few minutes ago, somebody brought up the issue of sleep, and we touched on it very briefly, and I said we'd come back to it, and let's do that right now. Martha did it. Okay, Martha, I'll give you first kick at this, but first I want to read something that the author of the book Mastermind, a PhD from Columbia, Maria Konnikova, wrote in the New York Times just a few days ago. She wrote, "Modern society is increasingly ill-equipped to provide our brains with the requisite cleaning time. The figures are stark. Some 80% of working adults suffer to some extent from sleep deprivation." That's 80%. According to the National Sleep Foundation, adults should sleep 7 to 9 hours. On average, we're getting 1 to 2 hours less sleep a night than we did 50 to 100 years ago, and 38 minutes less on weeknights than we did as little as 10 years ago. Between 50 and 70 million people in the United States suffer from some form of chronic sleep disorder. When our sleep is disturbed, whatever the cause, our cleaning system breaks down. What happens to our cognitive function when the trash piles up? That's a good question that she asks, Martha Herbert. What's the answer?
Well, she's got that information about the trash from a remarkable paper in Science magazine a few months ago, where they identified, they've been finding there are these fluid channels in the brain, which people are calling glymphatics. It's not lymph, but the glial cells shape these channels. And at night, what they found was that the glial cells shrink down 60 to 70%, allowing fluid to drain out, carrying out all the trash buildup from the day. So in addition, if you don't sleep, in addition to getting more inflammation, you're getting this trash not being eliminated, and that's not a good thing. And we all think we can cut corners. We can cut corners on food. We can cut corners on sleep. And if people tell you you're okay until your blood sugar is 120, and then suddenly magically you have diabetes, I think the big revolution here that encompasses all of this is that instead of waiting for people to get sick, we should be encouraging them to maintain their optimal wellness for as long as possible.
And when you talk about the trash piling up, what does that mean?
Yeah.
When you talk about the trash piling up, what does it mean?
Every day, it means every day we have proteins that misfold, or that there's just leftover products from what the cells do. There's just waste products, and they need to be gotten out of the way so they won't clog up the system. There's all kinds of, the whole process of producing trash and misfolding and so forth needs to be, it's not just repair, but also getting rid of the junk that piles up when the cell is done doing what it does. And these misfolded proteins which they're supposed to bend in certain ways, and when there's damage, they bend in other ways, and they work differently. When misfolded proteins pile up, when this fluid drainage doesn't occur, there's good science showing that you're more prone to get Alzheimer's. So is that because of the sleep, or is it because of other things? It could be because of physical blockages to the drainage system. We don't really know. But the combination of things that have you build up this trash is not good. So if you have control over your sleep, that's something you can do to minimize your risk of having this trash buildup.
Tiffany Chow.
I think I agree with what you said, but there's also another wonderful benefit of sleep that we are determining through resting state functional MRI studies. Everybody wonders what happens in your brain when you're not thinking about anything. Somebody mentioned earlier that we were taught in medical school that you're only using 10% of your brain at a time, and after you've had an alcoholic beverage, your brain shrinks by 20%. So what are you doing when you're offline, but your brain's still on? And what you're doing during sleep is a certain amount of, there's getting rid of the garbage, as Martha was saying, but there's also taking the stuff that you want to keep, memories, information, and cross-referencing it, refiling it, consolidating so that you can remember better later. This also happens in terms of physical wayfinding as well as some of the exercise that you do. So if you ever noticed that you were really clumsy at a particular new task, but then the very next time you tried it without rehearsing in between, you were actually more on the mark. This is because something's going on in your brain during sleep that makes you better, more skilled, more practiced, because in there, overnight, you've been practicing backwards how to get back to the place that you started from. If you're in a maze, they're really cool things that happen during sleep. So you're hurting yourself in more ways than one if you don't get enough sleep.
If you don't get enough sleep. Huh.
Let me jump in here. That
Please.
article talked about the adults and the workforce, 80% having a sleep deprivation, but our kids, I think it's even greater, and it's not just in the U.S., it's around the world. Our kids are chronically sleep deprived, most of them, either because they're working so hard to get better grades or they're addicted to their digital universe. And we all are. And this is one of the reasons that we really are losing sleep. And it's so important because sleep and exercise and diet all interact with one another. Sleep will help lower your blood sugar. Exercise will help you sleep longer and better. All these things work together, and we need to go back to what Martha said. She wanted to adopt all the 6 ways of lifestyle change to help us live better, adding sleep in and adding what we call vitamin C, or connection, being connected to others, to people, to small groups, is also very important for us to lower the stress, to have us, our brains work better.
And Tiffany, Chow, just to follow up, if
One
you
thing
can't
that
sleep,
people can-
sorry, just one second, Martha, I want to do a quick follow here.
Sure.
If you can't sleep, do you recommend taking a sleeping tablet or something like that?
Oh, our best sleepers or sleeping medications only work temporarily. So if you have a particular situation like jet lag, or you're excited about being on a TV show and you can't fall asleep, maybe you need to knock yourself out
Did
one or
you
2
have a
nights in
sleepless
row.
night last night by chance in
Well,
preparation
now
for
that's
today?
a personal question, Steve. I just warn that if you need medication to get to sleep chronically, something else is going on. Could be a medical problem that needs attention, could be your stress management, could be your lack of vitamin C standing for connection. Maybe you're too lonely. There are all kinds of things that impact how we fall asleep or whether we can maintain sleep. And we can Band-Aid it with medication, but I'd rather not.
Better get to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Martha Herbert, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to give a piece of practical advice, that news you can use, which is, you think about sleeping as when you unplug. Try unplugging the television in your bedroom, keeping your cell phone and tablets out of there. Get rid of the electricity in your room. A lot of people sleep better when they do that. Literally unplug. The currents may, if you're already in a tenuous position about how well you sleep, just make it a little harder, and any interference you can get rid of, that helps a lot of people.
Well, let's get a little personal here. David Perlmutter, when you go to sleep, do you have a TV on or a radio on, or do you put a podcast on or something like that?
No, I don't. I usually fall asleep in mid-sentence when I'm talking to my wife. It takes me about 45 seconds. It's probably because I'm just so, it's true. No, I'm not saying that my conversations with my wife are not intriguing, but when it's done, it's done. But I'd like to get back, if I could, to something that Dr. Herbert said earlier.
Sure.
And she was calling our attention, you're going to get me in trouble, calling our attention to the importance and the current state of science in recognizing the idea of misfolding of proteins in terms of neurological conditions and brain function, and it's really paramount. And proteins function based upon their 3-dimensional conformation, how they are shaped, and there's so much research going on right now about changes in the shape of proteins affecting how they work. And I think one area that needs to be explored further is something I discussed earlier, and that is we actually change the shape of proteins in the brain when they bind to sugar, a process called glycation. Now, doctors can measure how much you're glycating your proteins with a very sophisticated test called A1C. And I'm kidding. It isn't sophisticated. It's a test that every doctor does in his or her office every day. It's used to measure average blood sugar in the diabetic patient. But it's a marker of this process called glycation, binding of sugar to protein, in this case to hemoglobin, but it has really profound implications because it's a marker of glycation going on in the brain, as a matter of fact. And it turns out that A1C, hemoglobin A1C, is the most powerful metric in terms of a laboratory study to predict annualized shrinkage of your brain. There's a perfect correlation between your blood level of A1C and the annual rate at which your brain shrinks, and size does matter when it comes to your brain. The important thing about that study is that even at hemoglobin A1C levels of like 5.7 and 5.8, that most people will say, well, that's perfectly fine, don't worry about it. That's the second highest level of annualized brain shrinkage. And it really plays upon the recent study I mentioned earlier in the New England Journal of Medicine. What was so important about that study is that even at blood sugars of 105 and 110, there was already significant risk for developing dementia. So it all relates. And it even relates back to sleeping, because the higher your carbohydrates in your diet, the higher your blood sugar, the more insulin will be produced, the more you'll produce fat, and more you'll have a risk for becoming obese. And that's a huge player when it comes to things like obstructive sleep disorders, compromising sleep. So, what we're learning is when we started the program, all these bullet points that you mentioned, it turns out that everything here is powerfully interrelated, and to look for one specific leverage point, ask us to vote for our favorite, I think what we've developed now is this notion that, this is a very comprehensive, holistic approach where all of these factors are intimately related.
Understood. Let's talk, Tiffany, lifestyle. You deal with patients who've got dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, some of the toughest things that you can get in terms of bad health. How does lifestyle affect patients who have got those neurodegenerative diseases?
Well, I think one of the most important things for families and patients themselves is to try to maintain the best quality of life possible for the duration of that illness. And that's where lifestyle comes in. Just because you have Parkinson's disease doesn't mean you can't enjoy getting out and moving your body around. You're moving slower, maybe you're a little bit more clumsy, but there's actually something called Dancing with Parkinson's here in Toronto that shows very acute effects on the patient's movement. They start off in a chair, then they get behind the chair, leaning on the chair, and by the end of the hour, they are doing some kind of funky walk across the floor together. The benefits are interestingly measurable by antipsychotic eye tracking. So we're hooked up, the brain is hooked up to the eyes, which is actually part of the brain, to track things. But what becomes a cognitive exercise is when I tell you not to look where the green dot is going, but look away. And it's very interesting that when we did an experiment before and after the dance class, we saw that patients with Parkinson's disease did better, more normally, on that anti-saccade test. But interestingly, it also affects the patients in a positive way when they watch a video of the class together and are told not to move. So there's evidence for something like Parkinson's disease. There's also evidence that patients who have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease have better activities of daily living and less depression when we get them to become physically active. And this is a very important point in clinic. We can sometimes write a prescription for more exercise. So talk to them about what they like to do, what they have done in the past that works for them, what current limitations may be, and then adapt to bring exercise into their lives. So there's this sense of bringing more oxygen, and we can, David and I can arm wrestle about whether we want more glucose to get into the brain for these folks. But also, usually, as an older person, when you're doing physical activity, you're being brought into connection with other people. It becomes a social interaction, which is also good for you.
And being sociable is a good thing, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly. Isolation itself is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease.
Please, Martha, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a pitch for a modification, not a modification, but an addition to the language we use around exercise. Because it's not just that you move. I think there's a really big difference between being on a treadmill at the gym and watching TV and not paying attention to your body, and moving with awareness, being really attentive to the quality of your movement, to the intricacy of the movement, to improving the quality of the movement. And here I'm talking in the Moshe Feldenkrais and Anat Baniel tradition, where you really help someone recreate a quality or create anew a quality of sophistication in movement that I think is really important in training the brain too. I think that applies to dancing, but it doesn't apply to mindless activities in the gym, which may be good for your brain because of oxygenation, but I don't think they optimally take advantage of what we can do with movement, which is some of the most amazing things that people are able to do with movement that defy the imagination are really on the horizon for many of us, maybe not at the Olympic level, but that quality of excellence is also, and awareness is very, very important.
Okay, I have to take issue with your comment about the gym, being a little bit of a gym rat myself. I think that your point is very well taken, that those of us who are guilty of reading something on the treadmill, Steve,
Guilty.
We're cheating ourselves of having that mindful experience and the joy of how our bodies work. And so whenever possible, I will encourage people, whether they're in the gym or a dance class, to get a sense of what it's like to be in your body, to be present in this moment. That is a gift, to appreciate how your body can move while it still can. Or if you're in a situation where you have Parkinsonism due to Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease itself, or immobilized because you have a bad knee now, what can you still do? And what can you do with the movement that you have? Become aware of how you take up space and how you transform yourself across that space and what it does to other people around you. These are the things that expand the repertoire of what your mind is doing. And we've had a lot of people ask, I'm sure everybody on this panel has been asked, so what's the one video game that you're going to press forward? It's not about getting really good at one thing. It's about expanding your repertoire. That's where cognitive reserve can be built.
I'm aware. I'm aware. I've got to get through 4 newspapers every day, which is what I do on the treadmill. We're down to the last couple of minutes here, and I want to get John Ratey in to talk about another thing we hear a great deal about these days, and that is kids with autism. And I gather you and Martha run a special camp for kids with autism, and I wonder if you'd just take a moment to tell us about that.
Oh, it's not that we run it. We're doing research of a place in upstate New York called Center for Discovery, where there's about 365 or so adolescents with autism, and Martha and I are involved with a number of other researchers looking at the effect of lifestyle changes, basically, on the activity or the maladaptive activity of these kids, and seeing really terrific changes in their lives. Reduction of the psychotropic medicine, the antipsychotic medicine that they're on, normalization of a lot of their behaviors, certainly, and being much more social, being much more attuned, as well as being able to learn so much more easily when you pay attention to all these factors. But one of the big factors that I'm focusing on is that a lot of these kids coming in are encouraged and given opportunities to move. And some of these, the best cases are when we get the kids moving 65% of the time that they're awake. That means not just during the day, but during the evening with dance, with running groups, with working outside, with moving together, doing Zumba. All these things that they offer and the kids are involved with, and we see a dramatic shift in change in their aggression, self-abusive behavior, and lack of participation with others. So I think these are simple lifestyle changes. They pay attention a lot. We pay attention a lot to their sleep time, their diet, them being outside, them trying to be as mindful as possible, and keeping them moving.
We started with a chart, and let's just put up another chart in our last 30 seconds here. When you want to get back to the brain and make improvements, number 1, do brain exercises. Number 2, be sociable. Number 3, be open to new things. And I would include number 4, finish the discussion on time, which is what I have to do right now. Martha Herbert in San Francisco, David Perlmutter in Naples, Florida, John Ratey in Boston, Massachusetts, Tiffany Chow here in our studio. Thanks so much, everybody, for being with us tonight.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.